Did it again. Uh, um. Okay. The microphone works. My name is Ramirez. Um. This is FrogBear. This will be an episode on conclusions of a variety of things, but mainly because I have no idea what to talk about. Um. Yesterday I received. Yesterday I received my first strike on. I think it was a Matrix news episode, but I was already expecting it. Well, I was expecting for this channel to be flagged in a variety of ways. Um, so this episode will serve to kind of notify anybody that this channel will soon be lost. Like, this channel is going to get deleted. Like, I'm positive. Because one of the rules that got thrown at me was one of the newer rules that is used to get people off of off the platform. So I already know that my time here is very limited. So there is that. But yeah. I'm also a bit still in my head about the episode that I made yesterday about my Dear Diary. Or like nah, I'm still calling it my Dear Diary series. That was an old ass series. Nah, my journal entry. That journal entry was to serve a purpose for myself in the sense that I had to admit to myself that like I don't know that I have genuine feelings, I guess. Especially, it's more of a fact that I'm surprised that I can develop genuine feelings. It's more than anything else. Um, for the person who I'm all smitten with, they probably will never know that I exist. Um, Kind of better that way. I still have a lot to deal with myself. Mm, some of the other conclusions that I wanted to touch on was at least describing to a meaningful degree why I obsess over eugenics or eugenicist or that portion of history in America, which will probably be a bigger titled video next time. But to generalize, um, the way I see the world is we were born into it. There were other people that shaped the way that this country developed. And to suggest that the populace itself had any meaningful degree in shaping America to what it is now, I don't believe it. I don't believe that its citizenry, its citizens, any of the times, right? We thought civil rights, we thought the civil rights movement was a good thing, but it wasn't. It just gave us affirmative action. It began to lopside the identity and the cultural landscape of this country, but not because the citizens were the ones causing this, not because the white people were causing this, not because Mexicans, Hispanics, Asians, or blacks, none of them were the ones that completely changed the cultural landscape of this country. None of them did. They had very it's actually quite a joke to suggest that its citizens actually had any meaningful impact on the culture. Um, because music, the music industry as a whole reset itself around the 60s. And after so, you clearly saw a demonstrable effect within the industry um, that created what you called superstardom, where now being famous wasn't region locked to one specific location, one specific right, West Coast, East Coast, as an American example. And essentially, what happened was you had worldwide acclaim. One of the earliest bands to discover this, or some of the earliest people to discover this, were Elvis Presley, the Beatles. Um, Superstardom was a very brand new thing. And with the creation of the Beatles, or at least the creation of the love movement, the free love movement, it was clear that that agenda, to a large degree, was to lower the defenses of its populace, considering that not that long ago, 7, 8 to 9 years ago, prior to the Beatles showing up, the only other person that was able to knock on the doors of white America was Elvis Presley. And all of the songs that he stole, quote unquote, stole from black culture, which in reality was just the music industry trying to resell aspects of itself because, they only care about the profit. So, how am I correlating cultural movements like this and associating it with the eugenics movement? Well, would you. I always kind of laugh and chuckle at this question just because are you trying to. Because with that being said, what people are assuming is that the education system, that government, agencies, institutions, and lobbyists all of a sudden saw the movement and they were like, "Oh, we really like this movement. We're going to let it exist. We're just going to let everybody participate in this movement after." Right? Keep in mind, after, right? This is the 70s, this is the 60s, this is the end of the 60s, the beginning of the 70s. 20 years prior to that, you already had the Carnegies and the Rockefellers completely trying to mold the populace of Taiwan and China. They already created programs for them to implement birth control, like devices of populace control. So why would you assume, after these corporations just spent all of this money, how would you assume that these people all of a sudden decided that my heart grew 3 times as big, I'm not going to do anything anymore? It's a joke. Realistically, wisen up. Because what people like to think is that analytics and culture have no bridge, as in there is no meaningful way to introduce some sort of medium that will then change the populace's ideas, beliefs, and or ways of living. And well, look at us now. And case in point, demonstrable effects. Ooh. But either way. Because the way I see it is, if these people were already hell-bent on spending all this money to get a good grasp of understanding of people, its populations, its systems, and how people maintain themselves, I don't think they would just disappear. I don't think they would just be all willy-nilly like, "Oh yes, it's time for us to disappear. We've gathered all the research we need." It's like, nah. So I tend to always keep in account that if our science institutions, for another example, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, if these organizations had passed, if they had prior agendas before they decided to name change themselves, what makes you think that the agenda changed? What makes you think that the science changed? The clear goal was always obvious. And you can tell this now more than anything, more than ever before, because look at, how do I say this? Look at our food industry. Look at how the process of how food leaves a farm to go to a processing plant, to get to a packaging plant, and then to get ultimately to a store, then which you have to buy your product from. The chemicals that are sprayed on food completely at the detriment of nutrition. And why is that? And that's not a pharmaceutical company, that's a plant company. But it's always the same agenda. I gotta profit at every step of the way, and I have to make sure that your health and your well-being isn't my priority. And that's with the health industry, the food industry, our education system, our education institutions, our lawyers, our judicial system. Once you start applying that over and over again, you start to realize, maybe the system actually doesn't give a fuck about me. So Because I can imagine some people would have problems with my statements about fuck the thin blue line and all this other shit. And it's just like, it's just ideology and rhetoric. At the end of the day, these cops will follow their orders. The cops will follow anybody. I should mention that with anybody. Anybody will follow orders as long as the conditions are put before them in order for them to say yes. Right? If you create the set conditions for one style of music to perpetuate, it will push on forward, and everybody else will try to mimic it because you created a trend, and everybody else will try to follow that trend. And that's how we end up in the situation we're in with TikTok being the way it is, and with the newer generation of Zoomers following along. So it is kind of sad, and it is kind of scary to assume that human behavior has been mapped out to such a degree. But it's better to admit this than to still go to a voting poll, to still try to participate in this political system and assume that it's anything meaningful. And right, I'm saying this as a Trump supporter. I'm saying this as somebody who's about to vote for Trump again. But the difference here is the reaction was different. How? Right? Because the system is always trying to maintain a baseline. So imagine it like some of the machines in a hospital that you're plugged up to, and that's what's life support, right? Even you're hooked up to a life support system. Well, this country, the media and everything else, has a bit of a life support system. Because there's a baseline that it's trying to always maintain. There's always, it goes two up here, oh, go back down here, oh, go to it, and go back up here. There's always this baseline that's trying to be maintained at a constant basis between the news, the culture, the people, politics, business. It's always trying to maintain that baseline. When Orange Man came, that shit got disrupted. Where one day it's this, another day it's that. Oh, it already got really warm. Oh yeah, another one. Global warming. I think it's funny that people believe in global warming, and I'm just kind of like, you do realize for the last 3 years, weather across the United States has been thrown off whack, right? If you think that wasn't going to turn into a recursive action later throughout the years, I don't know what to assume, right? Data works. It's not that history repeats, it rhymes. But like when you look at data sets and like weather, you can just assume some of these things will occur. But global warming, right, is only an agenda for carbon credits. And if you look at the idea of what carbon credits is, it's essentially a credit score where you're only really allowed, right? If you want to go to Starbucks, that'll cost you 18 carbon credits. If you want to build a business, that'll cost you this many carbon credits. And it's a way to limit you. It's a way to limit your production capabilities in the sense of, you know what I mean? In America, you can move up an economic ladder. In the rest of the world, not everywhere, but you still can climb the economic ladder, but that's not what they want. They want like this 2-tier system in like China, where there's a guarded wall. Then on the other side, that's where all the noblige people, all the correct gene people live, and then outside of the walls are everybody else who they don't want. And everybody else who they do not want, that's what they want to call the Delta class, the worker class. That's where I always bring up the Aldous Huxley book, because in Aldous Huxley, that beginning portion of that book irks me every time, because it's essentially what they've created. They've created degrees or separations of classes, and to them it's just normal. It's like, oh, you live in that city district, or oh, you live in that district over there, and that's just what it's supposed to be. So, and it's all shaped by eugenicists, right? This all goes back to the fact that at first I did not want to believe, right? I still remember some of the rhetoric that I remember hearing, which was, America's a racist country. America has a racist past. America this, America that. At first, I spent, I want to say 2 to 3 years denying that, only to spend the last year and a half proving that. How the fuck do you think I feel? Right? I wanted to not believe that America was a completely racist country, that it wasn't a country completely designed by eugenicists, a country that wasn't completely fucked from the get-go, and it is from the very not from the very beginning. You know, some would assume that like the moment Thomas Jefferson sold out everybody and started being an informant for the Queen, some people would assume that, but some people would bring up the claim of when America became a corporation, um, they essentially added more. They essentially added more verbiage to obfuscate jurisdictions, and there's all sorts of things that we can get into. But essentially, what I can put my conclusion to is there was clearly a system that was designed here in America to work flawlessly. The problem was the powers that be in Europe did not want America to flourish under these conditions. So, essentially, they hijacked the whole country, used legal language to create a different sort of fictitious jurisdiction that we all operate in. And that's what allowed the creation of corporations, the systems, the financial systems we have now today. Essentially, we were built on a very faulty foundation that was built on a lie and built off of a mimic of our judicial system. And it's what we're playing out now. And you know, there is this whole aspect of America was a corporation. Like if you look at the first ship that discovered this country, it's literally the flag. It's the American flag. So it's always been this war between citizens, their freedom, and fighting against those who want to shape human history. And the people who want to shape human history have largely seen themselves as vastly superior people. And they've essentially created science to reflect that. And it's just like, yes, I'm going to sponsor you to make science to show me as the best boy. And that's where we're at now. What's my time? 17 minutes. Yeah, I think that's it for the conclusion. Part 1. Very weird juju. It's not like I wanted to be the guy who's like, yeah, I've only discovered that America is a really fucked up place. America's actually a eugenicist playground. Actually, that's what I'm going to call this episode. No, I should name that the other episode. Either way. Yeah, that's essentially what I discovered, that America's a psychopath playground. And the only people who get to actually do anything meaningful in this country are cutthroat people. Like, you really gotta be cutthroat. Like, you cannot have any fucking mercy to anybody. And it's fucked up to say, but it is what it is. Like, charge that shit to the game, son. There I go, fucking using verbiage that ain't even mine, right? I'm head over heels, you know? Quite charmed if I yeah. I think I don't know what else to say. Besides the fact that include all this, I find myself being how do I say this? Like, I'm fighting the urge. I'm essentially denying that I'm actually feeling something for somebody. But whatevs. It is what it is. I'm gonna leave it